How are you doing today, goalies? Welcome back to the DIY Goalie Podcast, as always, with Nathan and Connor. And today we've got a special guest who's kind of a celebrity around here in the Edmonton area in the sports world. We've got Joaquin Gage with us today, who's going to talk a little bit about his career and then transitioning into life after hockey. So, how are we doing today, Joaquin?
Great, boys. Thanks for the lovely introduction. Good to be amongst goaltenders for once. Players, defensemen. It's tough sledding with some of these guys, especially when half the city blames a goalie for losing a 1-0 game, which I don't understand anyway. But no,
Yeah,
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah,
This is
you
great.
were you were on quite the heater. I was listening in the afternoon this morning. I was like, oh boy.
Well,
yeah.
Dusty was poking the bear there. As soon as he came in, he was trying to get me going on the goal. Like I go, I know what you're doing. Like I know what you're trying to get me to do. He goes, no, it's just people were saying, and I go, stop it, Dusty. And then, and then Hernan, of course, he's poking me too, but I don't understand it. Whatever, people will have their views. There seems to, I mean, in every market. I don't know if you listen to any other like podcasts or shows now in other Canadian markets, they're essentially the same, right? Winnipeg thinks the sky is falling after losing a few games. It's quite humorous to see out other markets and how they treat their team, because the similarities between Edmonton and everywhere else are exactly like you'd think they were.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure. Well, and I think here too, especially with at least the Canadian markets, the spotlight on wanting the success since
Oh
it's
gosh,
been
yeah.
over 30 years. But no, we appreciate you coming on. To dive into it, why don't you kind of give us a bit of a background on yourself, your playing career, kind of your journey to the pros, and a little bit about what you're doing after. We'll get into that a little bit more later, but just kind of the general overview of how you made your way through the ranks.
Sure. This is a, I don't know how much time I got. It's a long story, but, and I'm long winded. So just let me know, cut me off or play some
It's all
music and play
good.
me off stage. The,
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's funny because if I really think back to why I started playing hockey in the first place was I grew growing up in Vancouver. Most kids played soccer, right? So I was playing soccer, and then I always wondered where all my friends went afterwards. And finally they told me, and they said they're going to play hockey. And of course, just being a little kid, I wanted to hang out with my friends. So I told my dad mom and dad, I wanted to play hockey. So we went to this ratty secondhand, like I think it was a pawn shop, really, that my dad took me to, and grabbed me some gear. And I was essentially that kid in the Tim Hortons commercial, put on all this gear and sat and watched the Leafs play on, probably a 15-inch black and white TV, and in old Maple Leaf Gardens watching a hockey game, thinking, I want to do this one day. This is great. So, um, fast forward, I played a little bit, and to becoming a goalie was unique for me. I think I was like a lot of little kids when you just don't want to leave the ice, right? And A, that was why I didn't want to come off, and B, my coach was actually the head of kinesiology at UBC. So he was kind of the mad scientist a little bit of a psychopath, but he did all these tests with us, and I guess out of all the kids, I tested higher with reflexes and my fast twitch. Like he did biopsies with us, and I had a high count of fast twitch muscle fibers or something ridiculous
Yeah,
like that. I don't know.
probably
And
stuff you can't do
yeah,
nowadays. Hey,
yeah, no, yeah, they probably do this regularly now. But
yeah,
he, the next day, my dad said, "Oh, I got a surprise for you," and me thinking it's probably like a GI Joe thing or something, but it was a bunch of goalie gear. I was like, "Wow!" And first, I loved it because I never had to leave the ice, and I kind of had an affinity to it, and was able to stop some pucks and really enjoyed it, and kind of just grew from there. Um, we weren't the best team, so that was kind of a good thing for a young kid, especially a goalie, just to see just so many shots. We would get pounded all the time. Lots of tears in the car ride home. But I think that better prepared me for later on, right? And as with young kids playing rep hockey, especially in the Lower Mainland in Vancouver, right? The travel is just, it's not very easy to get to different places. So I wanted to actually go to a. My dad suggested maybe a private school, and he was actually looking at prep schools in Boston, and
Well,
but the cost was just astronomical, right? So um, I we found Athol Murray College in Notre Dame, and back then I think St. Mike's was the only real. If you really look at it, it was like there was two academies in Canada, and those were the two kind of hockey academies. A little bit different at Notre Dame. Most guys went there to play hockey or were sent there by a judge, so it was a unique student body back then.
Yeah.
But I still talk to a lot of the guys that I played with on those teams, and funny enough, that's where I first met Curtis Joseph. He was playing on the junior team when I was 14 years old, and so I years later, fast forward, it was funny because we became teammates with the Oilers, right? So,
Yeah.
and actually, then I, of course, I just wanted to play hockey, but there you're forced to do a lot of other sports. And I played football, volleyball, basketball, all ran track, did everything. Um, did and winded up. I didn't make the AAA team. I guess that would be U16 or something at that point. And I decided this is enough because the chancellor of the school told me I'd never make a dime playing hockey. So kind of doused my dreams of becoming a professional hockey player and thought I had to go somewhere else. And really, and this is I think that you don't see this that much anymore. I think because of the involvement with probably agents and things like that, they get involved at a very young age. But I took it upon myself to kind of contact people, and I did this throughout my career too. But I phoned the Kamloops Blazers and asked if I could come for a tryout, and they said sure, why not? It's another body at camp. So I literally went to a major junior camp at 17, complete unknown, and basically ended up staying on the team till about end of October. And they had two really good goalies, like Corey Hirsch. Obviously, you probably remember him, and Dale Masson at the time, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. But um, just no room for me. And then kind of I bounced around everywhere, and it was probably one of the toughest years I ever had playing hockey throughout that time. Um, and I ended up playing on a team in Bellingham, Washington, called the Ice Hawks. And I guess this is where it perseverance, and you never know who's watching, right? And so you always want to prepare and give yourself the best chance of you know advancing or or bringing light to your game or whatever you want to call it. But the Portland Winterhawks, because back I was still on Kamloops Blazers list, they still had me on their list. They came up to Nanaimo and watched us in Bellingham, and we were again a pretty bad team, but I think we won like 2-1, and I had one of those games where I probably stopped 50 or 60 shots. The next day, they traded for me, so um, it just goes to show you, like I was so close to just probably not playing the rest of the year because I'd been on so many other teams. Thinking, how's a goalie? How are you going to make a team in December, right? As a goalie, everyone's got their goalies already. But it was, I went, I remember my first practice in Bellingham, the coach said, okay, get in there. And the coach, he must have stood 6 feet away from me and watched me the whole practice. And after a few drills, he goes, "Yep, you're better than that guy. You're playing next game." And the next game was the Nanaimo game, and I went to Portland the next year, and that year I got drafted by Edmonton. So from basically not knowing if I have a place to play to getting drafted by the Edmonton Oilers, all within kind of like a year and a half. It was a crazy time. So um, I tell this story to a lot of young goalies all the time, just because I think a lot of you is, oh, it was a paved path. He just, it was the next logical step for guys. But no, there was and it some guys have it a little bit more paved, I guess. But um, you're gonna hit some speed bumps along the way, right? Whether it's there's too many goalies on a team, or maybe there's just someone that doesn't believe in you. But I think the thing that I had most was the belief in myself, right? So
Yeah.
Interesting. Joaquin, again, thank you again for coming on the show. Much appreciated. I think you kind of answered this question a little bit, so I'm going to see if I can word it differently. Um, what do you think realistically like helped you to be successful in your career in becoming a pro goalie with the Edmonton Oilers? And I hear this a lot, particularly when I listen to the In Goal podcast, and I feel like it's probably the same with you. It's like, was there at around your time playing, was there really any goalie coaching or like anybody that you kind of could bounce ideas off of, or kind of, have somebody else to talk to? Me, like you were just telling us with the EST, you're kind of the only goalie on the team there at EST among forwards and defensemen and whatnot. So kind of isolated in that position. I can't imagine that probably around those years when you were playing it, like you were kind of, it's just kind of you and your goalie partner and that's it.
yeah, it was a completely different time back then. There was not a lot of help with goalie coaches. I mean, if you look back, I don't even think NHL teams had goalie coaches. And really, the relationship, and I don't know, maybe it's changed a little bit, but that there's always competition. No matter if there's a for sure number one and a backup. There's always goalie competition, right? And I think back then we were. It depended on the relationship you had with your partner, but for the most part, you kind of kept your cards close to the chest a little bit, right? You would watch the other guy play, and you go, okay, well, that was pretty cool what he did there. That's impressive. And then you go, well, I would have stopped that one, And so, but I mean, I had good relationships with a lot of these guys, but we never really sat down and broke down games about what to do here. There was subtle reminders, I guess, from when I got to the pros, when I had as a younger goalie, that they would give me little tidbits of advice, but not too much, because they're still the big dogs, right? But yeah, they I didn't really. I had one good coach that came when I was in the minors with Edmonton. His name was Dave Pryor, and I think he worked with the Capitals, and he also worked with the Vegas Golden Knights for a while. And it was the first time where I got a guy that could kind of refine my game. I was a little bit all over the place, because I could, I was able to jump around and kind of athletic, but when you get to that level, you need to have a more of a strong foundational base of goaltending that will get you to the next level. And I just didn't really have that until that's little pieces started to get put together, and figuring things out more. I had Edmonton. The first goalie coach I had was actually Pete Peters, so which was really funny, because he was strong as an ox, but he was basically more interested in riding stationary bikes and standing up on the angles. So his the game had changed too much, I think, for him to be the coach of goaltenders. He was from a different time, and so, but there was still a lot of things that I could take from what he was trying to put down. And then I would say one of the people that had probably the most profound um, like influence on my career was his name's Thomas Magnusson, and he was my goalie coach when I played in Sweden. And I had a really good relationship with him, and he would come after games and sit with me, and we'd talk about the game, and not just like the positioning things, but the feeling of where your positioning was, and different points of the game, like how you looked anxious or you looked relaxed, and then essentially the next day we would create drills that, by looking at the game itself, that would refine movements or things that I would maybe need to work on against different teams, which was actually a lot of fun to do because no one, although he was a coach, and I'm so old that you just kind of listen to your coach, right? That's the school I came from. But that was the first time that it was a real collaborative effort on both our parts to be better. And looking back, it was probably one of the the best years I had playing goal. It was so much fun.
So
Yeah.
just kind of figured out yourself as you went along.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, it's not like today. Like I mean, I coach a little bit, not so much lately, but too busy. But I mean, if I'm just in Terwilliger, and when I walk past, if I'm at the rink and walking past, and I see like a goalie school, right, and you see 20 goalies out there, all refining movements, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love seeing that, and working on certain movements and certain game type situations for goalies to refine, because you go to the next sheet ice and some guy's taking a slap shot from the hash marks, right? That's it's night and day. And or it hits the glass, and I just cringe when
Right.
I see that, and I'm just like, wow, it would have been great to have something like that back as a kid, for sure.
Well, I'm gonna
Yeah.
say this. Sorry, Nathan. I keep cutting you off
Yeah.
here. I'm getting excited. Uh no, I was gonna say, well, like obviously, no, you're too busy and all that, but I think I speak for Nathan and I here. Is like I think you're always welcome to be a guest instructor at True North Goaltending here in Edmonton. So,
Sure.
Yeah. Um, Goaltending is a matter of inches. As goalies, we need to gain every advantage possible. This is where Visual Edge can help. With Visual Edge's cutting edge cognitive and visual training, you'll improve your reaction time, anticipation, and overall decision making. Imagine seeing the puck faster, reacting quicker, and making those clutch saves.
walking in 1-on-1 makes a shot, big save by the goaltender, and it comes back the other way.
Ready to unlock your full potential? Visit visualedge.com and use code DIYPOD for 20% off. That's DIYPOD at visualedge.com. VIZUAL edge.com. Yeah, I was just going to kind of build off of that because, like, I know after your kind of NHL stint here in Edmonton, you spent quite a few years overseas. And I know like what I've heard from other players who played overseas, and I don't know if it was like this back when you played, but the European game, kind of with the Olympic sized ice surface, was a lot more kind of east west and a lot more, you know, passing kind of lateral plays, not as many shots, but a lot more kind of build up to a play. So I'm wondering if, because you had mentioned that you're an athletic goalie, you could move well and all that stuff, and that's kind of what you relied on. Do you find that the way the game was played overseas, kind of in Europe, that it suited your style a little bit better, or what do you think
Mm,
on that?
it's a good question. I don't think so at first, just because I'd grown up on North American ice, right? And when I first went over there, like I played on Team Canada in '99, so most of the rinks that we played on were they were all Olympic size,
Mm.
and depending on I found that different countries played differently. Um, like Russians were just so skilled based and wanted to challenge you one on one every chance they got, right? They were all flashy. Whereas Swedes were more of a puck control game, like you'd mentioned. Like it's essentially like 3-on-3 all the time. If they don't see something they like, they retreat back and re-attack, right? So there's points of the games, and a lot of people say they don't like it because of this, but the other, they'll have the puck for 5 minutes, and it's very difficult when they're that skilled and that good of skaters to get the puck away. Finnish players I felt were the closest to Canadians, dumping and chasing, a little bit more grinding style that their national team played. So it really all depended on the what type of players you had on teams, right? Of course, I played in Germany a lot, and that was more of a mixture of everyone. I would say that was probably as close as you could have gotten to the American League as possible, just because of the influence of North Americans and other players. Swiss guys, again, more skilled, lots of skating. They like pretty plays, things like that. So it essentially it all depended on where I was playing at the time. But I I think that it took me a while to figure out how to manage teams with puck control and waiting for opportune times, right? Because the North American game was a lot of, coming down the wing, let her buck, crash the net, going for rebounds. This was this was a lot more like structured, kind of a like in soccer, football, they have what's called set pieces, right? So you'd see them get into a certain alignment and then they'd try to execute a play, kind of like basketball, I guess, in a way. So that's probably what it took me a while. It did take me a while to get used to it, but when I kind of figured it out, it was very enjoyable to play.
Do you think
Awesome.
like the size difference of the ice played a factor at all? It must have. Could imagine.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so much more room, right? Tracking players, where the danger's coming from. You learn to where you have to be situated in the net for a lot of, like you said, east west plays, right? Because I mean, a shot from the corner, the top of the circles, off to the boards. It's a long distance to to the net. So much different type of games for those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just go ahead, Nathan.
So yeah, I was just gonna say, um, just given the change that you've seen, like you kind of mentioned, you know, being at the rink, seeing goalie camps and stuff like that, and having that welcome change. I'm just curious, like your thoughts on the game today as opposed to the game that you played. Like, what are kind of, aside from the obvious like style differences, what are some of the other differences you noticed? And then also, I guess, like what's the same? Like, I know that the game's changed a lot, but there's going to be some things that are kind of, you know, similar across the board.
Um, the I mean, the mental aspect, I don't think will ever change. Like that
Yeah.
feeling of being a goalie, it doesn't matter what the game, what the evolution of the game. I still think it's thought the same way. Obviously, equipment is a huge difference now.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I Years ago, I bought a new pair of pads, and it went to the Purelator office, and I grabbed these things, and they brought out the box, and I picked it up. I almost threw this thing through the roof, and I was like, what? I thought I just ordered one pad, and then I
Yeah.
took them out and I go, are these road hockey pads? And I actually like used them that night, and I was like, geez, this is crazy. These are so light, and there's nothing to them. Um, the movement is completely different, right?
Yeah.
Whatever, the reverse VH or V, the way goalies set up. And I think that because of the evolution of sticks for guys, it's kind of forced in a lot of cases goalies to become more blockers than goalies that make saves. And I think there's both, obviously. You guys probably watched the game last night. There was a lot of instances where both Stuart Skinner and Aiden Hill were blockers, getting in the way, but they also made some really good saves. I look at the rebound on Nuge, like that was an unreal save by Aiden Hill, and Stuart Skinner comes back with a great glove save on Thomas Hurdle, right? So you have to be able to do both a little bit, or have the ability to do both. Um, but let's face it, when a lot of people that watch goaltenders and they say he makes a big windmill glove save, and or he makes a second save and dives across, and they go, "Oh my God, that's such a great save." But when you talk to most goalies, they're like, "No, I hated that save because I was probably in the wrong position. I let out a rebound. The best games that I feel good about is when half of them are just hitting me in the crest, right? Because then I know that there's usually nothing else to shoot at, and my positioning is sound. So it's funny to talk to the non-goalie folk of a good game and bad game when they say, "Oh, he played okay." No, he played way more than okay. He just had 25 shots right in his sternum. That's a solid night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just sorry, Connor, I got one more to slide in here because I was I know that I had kind of an older school goalie coach when I was growing up that said because the gear back in the day it like hurt. So he said that he would actually bait guys to shoot for the top corner glove side for that big windmill. Is that kind of
Oh yeah,
what you guys did back in the day?
yeah. I mean, if in practice or something, if my hand hurt or something, I would just step 2 steps to the left, right? And even if I play men's league, I'll mess with guys. Like
Yeah.
I'll stand way over to the side, and they see an open side of the net, and their eyes light up, and then they look down at the puck to shoot, and I just kind of move over. It hits me right in this, and they were like, "What just happened there?" But I think there's something to that a little bit. The thing is, I don't know about you guys, but I think a lot of times, I mean, there's some really there's great goalies in the NHL, but I'm still waiting on a guy to see a guy really, you know, someone that's going to change the position a little bit. And
Yeah.
I look at Shesterkin, and he's phenomenal. Like he's a great blend of, a blocker and a guy that can take goals away. But I'm wondering if we're going to get that next step, because you see how players shoot the puck now, and most goalies do the exact same thing. Like when I played, teams, you had to make adjustments to who you were playing against, right? If you're playing against Patrick Waugh, he was big, went down to that butterfly thing. Dominic Hasek, no one knew what he was going to do, right? Cujo sat back in the net a little bit, used it really good with his hands, and he had to keep the puck away from him because he was a good stick handler. So the cookie cutter of goaltending, like guys don't even, a lot of times when they shoot the puck, they just know that, okay, if I'm here, it's a good chance the goalie's going down, or he's in this position, and they're just taking the odds and putting it in a place. Like in my day, a short side goal was taboo. You were not supposed to do that. So even when I understand it now, because it's different how goalies do things, but I still cringe when I see something go short side on a guy from a bad angle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough there. Um, Obviously, like after playing in Edmonton and beyond, and then coming back to Edmonton, I'm going to gather that you probably have some connections, probably a lot of connections with the goalie community here, especially in Edmonton and Alberta and beyond. And so I'm going to gather that you've probably had quite a few conversations with goalie coaches and other goalies in the city and whatnot, and probably have picked up on some of the new terminology, or just kind of just kind of what's happening in the goalie community now compared to when you played back then. So just my question is just knowing what you know now in 2024, what do you think what we do now with goalies would have helped when you played back with the Oilers and playing over the seas, or is there anything that you would change, or do you think like, no, I was happy with how I was playing back then, just because that's the way the game was played, and wouldn't really want to change anything up about it?
Um, Again, I think the equipment allowed for goalies to become a little bit more efficient with their movements. Stats and things have changed the way they goalies play to a degree as well. Of course, I would have. There's a few things that obviously goalies do now that I wish I would have thought about or tried to incorporate in my game. I mean, I remember when I mean, I would say it was weird because I would say French Canadian goalies were kind of the first ones to, if they went down in a butterfly, they stayed there, right? And then they started moving around in the crease on their knees. That was, again, as a kid, I was taught if you go down, your next step is always to get back to your feet, right? So, but it is far more efficient if for close in plays, right, that you're taking away the bottom part of that net. I mean, you watch old game films and see goalies get back up, and if they just would have stayed in position, right? It. I think what again the equipment and has allowed goalies to be a little bit more patient with their positioning and letting the puck come to them a little bit more. Um, and as I got older and things were changing, I changed my game to try to incorporate these things. But it gets to a certain point when time does pass you by.
Yeah, fair enough. Um, so transitioning away from hockey then, because one thing I think a lot of just players in general and athletes in general don't really take into account is what to do after. Like once you've kind of hung up the skates or whatever it is that you're hanging up, um, having a plan, I guess, or kind of an approach for life beyond hockey, beyond sports. So obviously now, like you do a lot of media stuff, you're a financial advisor and all of that. Um, when you came out of hockey, did you kind of have an idea of what you wanted to do, or how was that kind of transition from, you know, being a pro hockey player to now kind of being like, well, I guess I got to hit the real world now
Yeah,
and going that route?
yeah. It's I mean, you know it's coming to an end at one point, right? And
Yeah.
I probably could have squeezed it out a few more years, but um, I think that I had a wife, a kid, and we were going to have our second. So, what did I want to do? Did I want to be jumping all around Europe, or providing kind of a stable home base here in it? I met my wife here, so and again with the connections that I had made playing through Edmonton and relationships, it was a no brainer to drop anchor here. It's interesting now with the new regulations of now major junior players can go play in the NCAA, right? And there's so many more leagues right now, and I mean, let's face it, there's not many jobs in the NHL for goaltenders. There's only a few, and so what my advice to kids is try to get some sort of base or of education, and you can use hockey to do that better now than you could ever, because that will prepare you mostly for after you're done. Because if you're fortunate enough, like I was, to play for a long period of time, you come out of hockey thinking you're old, but you really have so much more runway ahead of you, right? You're a young man, and it is a little bit daunting to get out there. You're so used to, you know, 20 new friends every year, right? It's a lot of fun to look forward to these types of things, but um once I would say, like, there was a lot of guys as we got older, you'd see guys taking courses, things like that, getting set up, talking to people. That's what I would recommend. Talk to people that are in workforces, or talk to people that are doing something that maybe piques your interest, right? You don't want to jump into something after playing hockey that you're not going to really enjoy. That's not going to work out that well for you. I mean, look, I was lucky enough to meet some people and get to where I am now with a little bit of luck because I mean, being an ex-Oiler does have its benefits to an extent. My buddies, my close friends, always bug me though. Now he said, "You're way more famous now than you were when you played." So, and but look, the advising thing. I got recruited essentially from a guy back east. He was an old hockey player himself. Asked if I wanted to get involved, and really, I didn't know anything about financial planning. I just had to take all my courses and kind of learn that way and go through QAFP and I'm now going through going on the path to CFP. It's but I enjoy it, right? So if you're lucky enough to find something that you enjoy, I think that's the biggest thing. So it wasn't too hard for me, and I have a patient wife too, so she allowed me to find what I really wanted to do.
Yeah. I recently got married in June
Nice.
of 2024. And so I think
Congrats.
my wife, thank you. My wife is still, I think, kind of figuring out the patient side of things when it comes to kind of what we're doing with hockey. And
Yeah,
because we just recently opened up our synthetic training facility out in
that's
Nisku.
awesome.
I say it was more like Nathan did all the heavy lifting, but beyond that, yeah, no, I think she's still figuring out a little bit with that. I know Jess has been, Nathan, your wife. I know Jess has just been phenomenal, just kind of with supporting you and doing all that. So I love Jess. She's a beauty. Joaquin, I'm going to talk for a little bit here, so I apologize. I guess first off, just because you'd mentioned like you were going for your QA, was it QAFP? You said
Yeah,
with,
yeah.
and then what was the other one? It was like CFP.
It's CFP. Yeah.
So just what are those? I'm more so just curious for my own sake. What are those?
It's
what does all
just
that mean?
two designations for financial planners.
Okay.
They're essentially just little letters that you put beside your name. But with anything, it's credibility, right? You
Sure.
have the just like the paper of finishing university or something. It shows that you put in the work and the time to achieve something. So
Okay. Interesting. Um, So I know that we were talking about it, or I think you and Nathan were talking about it before I jumped in here. Um, you're pretty well known here in Edmonton, not only for playing for the Oilers, but particularly with TSN 1260 as well as Edmonton Sports Talk. I tune in with you guys here and there. Like I said, I was listening to you rant and rave about Oilers fans and Stuart Skinner and the 1-0 goal, which we're not going to get into on that. I feel like you've talked enough about that. So how did you get your start in media, and how did you kind of get to know Dustin Nielsen, Lieutenant Eric, and all those guys at 1260 and transition into EST?
it's kind of funny because a friend of mine who I played with on Team Canada, he was working at 1260 at the time, selling time. Basically, I think he was in advertising. So I heard him talk, and he was actually doing some Bears games. He was doing some color commenting of the Bears, and I went to a Bears game and I ran into Dusty, and I just introduced myself and said, "Hey, is Kent here?" Whatever. And so we talked a bit, and I want to say I think it was like the next day I ran into him again at Canadian Tire. And so we were kind of laughing, and I'm stalking you, you're stalking me, whatever. And then he says, Dusty goes, "Well, you should come on the show." I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, sure, why not?" I go, "Sure." And then he texted me and said, and this is way back when it's at 1260, and he goes, "Yeah, come in this day. We'll just do a hit." But I had listened to Howard Stern all the time, and I was like, "This will be cool. Like, I'd love to just go in and see how the radio works, right?" So um, the show started at 6. I was probably there at 6, and I was like, Dusty's like, "What are you doing here? You're not going on till whatever 8." And I go, "No, I just thought I'd sit and watch. Is that okay?" He goes, "Yeah, sure." So he kind of showed me how everything works and the mute button, cough button, whatever. And so I was just sitting there, and then he asked me a question, and so I answered it and ended up just being on the show the whole day. And it was funny because Dave Jameson came in, and Dave goes, "This is great. You got to do this all the time." And if you know Dave, it's pretty funny. And so I just kind of came on here and there and stuff. And I thought about it, and it was kind of it was fun, essentially, like being on the radio, whatever. It's kind of fun. So Dusty would give me a call and say, "Hey, you want to come on?" And I would kind of just say yes. And then I guess when it really hit the where I started to do way more, the first round of cuts from Bell Media across Canada, they cut a bunch of sports radio shows. Edmonton was still, they'd survived that initial cut, and Dusty gave me a call again a couple days later and goes, "Hey, I gotta start developing a backup plan, and do you want to start doing a podcast?" And that's how we started Two Guys and a Goalie, and now we're whatever. I think we're close to 500 episodes actually. That was pre-COVID, and we're just kind of doing this podcast thing, and everything's going well. And then when COVID hit, and I remember the day that it happened because it was January 6th, the insurrection in the U.S. And I was on the phone with my buddy talking to him. I was like, "Can you believe what's happened in the U.S.? This is crazy. This is crazy." And I got a call. It was a 416 area code number, and it was from Toronto. So I think it's my buddy. And he left a message, which was weird. So after I was talking to him with my friend, I called him back, and it said, "Hey, this is Rob Corte from Sportsnet. I just wanted to see if you were interested in doing some games with Gene on the panel this year because of COVID, and no one was traveling, right?" Me being me, I thought it was my buddy back home messing with me. So I phoned this number back saying, "Yeah, nice one."
Oh
Uh,
no.
yeah, I thought it was Turan Samwith from GS Construction. "Hey, Turan, yeah, nice one." Yeah, no, it's Rob. And I go, "Yeah, whatever." He goes, "No, it's Rob." And I'm like, "Geez, this guy's really playing this up. I think it actually is this guy." So I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." He goes, "No, it's okay. Would you be interested in doing the going on TV?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I said it. And okay, Gene will get in touch with you soon. And I hung up the phone. And then right when I hung up the phone, I go, "What did I just say yes to?" Like I was like, "Am I going on TV really?" And yeah, so it kind of worked out there. They had a bunch of guys kind of trying out and seeing how it worked. Obviously, Struddy's a master at it, and I think you'll probably see Mac T on there too. He's just he tries to escape the winter a little bit and is in San Diego right now. But yeah, Gene keeps asking me to come back and stuff. So yeah, that was basically it. And then Dusty, after the first year of Edmonton Sports Talk, they were looking to expand because they were just going from 6 to 1, right? They were looking for some afternoon programming, and it was another kind of funny thing because Dusty, if you've ever met him, he's the nicest guy ever, right? So he goes, "Joaquin, can I come into the office here? I need to talk to you." I'm like, "Jesus, how did I get fired from this?" and and so he says, "Hey, what do you think of maybe doing a show 1 to 3?" And I go, "Geez, let me talk to my wife." I came home. My wife goes, "Yes, do it." And so, yeah, I mean, I'm busy because I essentially have 2 jobs now. But um, what goes with financial planning, a lot of it's prospecting and trying to find new clients, right? So I find that like I run some commercials on EST and stuff, so that kind of takes care of a little bit of my prospecting of getting new clients. And talking sports for a couple hours is probably something I do anyway with my buddies, so it worked out well.
Yeah, I know that's like even because this will be I think our 36th episode
Nice.
weekly, and yeah, it's just you almost get worried about running out of things to talk about, and yet they just keep
They
coming.
just keep
So
coming.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a cool experience, and the people you get to talk to and meet too, like it's awesome. But I'm curious, because you see a lot of guys transition once they've kind of ended their career to being like an analyst or a color guy or something like that. Um, do you think that? like there's a certain personality that really goes well with that transition, or
Oh
what's
yeah.
kind of your
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
experience with that?
yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're probably not going to see like John Tavares be a broadcaster, right? Like it's just certain. And like I grew up. I mean, Louis was here my first. Louis DeBrusque was here my first rookie camp. He had just got traded from the Rangers, I believe, at that point. And this guy, I mean, he'll never shut up, right? He'll just keep going. See, if you were to meet Struddy, it would back in the day. Like, has this guy ever stopped talking? You know, they have a gift of not only uh, speaking in a certain way, but being uh, have a lot of they're both very charismatic people, right? If you ever see Louis in the wild or Struddy, there's usually two or three people talking to him. It seems like all the time, right? So you can kind of tell it's a certain personality. I think I find myself somewhere in the middle. I was never shy to talk to someone, right? I mean, probably some of my interviews were a little bit stale back in the day, and I probably said give it 110%, get the puck deep, and hopefully we win or whatever. But
The standard.
yeah, no, there's definitely certain guys are cut out for it, um, and that's what you see. Like Gazdek, great guy. Bieksa, from I've never met him, but I hear is one of the funniest guys you've ever met, right? So it's just that type of person.
Yeah.
Was it like, I guess suppose like when you first started, particularly when with 1260, um, like obviously people are more like some people are camera shy, some people aren't comfortable behind a mic, some people aren't. I obviously am not one of those guys that is not that is completely comfortable behind the mic. So like from when you first started at 1260 and doing the hit with Dusty to where you are now, do you find like at like when you started like I'm not sure about this, like even like with Sportsnet too, right? It's like I was like I'm not sure about this, like I don't know if I'm comfortable with it, and then does like the comfortability level grow as you continue doing it?
The imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in anything you do, and I don't want this to sound too arrogant, but a little bit of not caring too much kind of helps. You know, like it's
Fair.
okay if you mess up, or you know, if you go in just all stiff. And trust me, like I was scared to death on Sportsnet because TV is a little bit different. It's a lot quicker, right? There's someone in your ear talking. It's a completely different vibe, and to try to get something that sounds somewhat intelligent in that small little time frame is you know, and being engaging and maybe say something that maybe people haven't heard before or what they want to hear, that's hard. Radio, a little bit different, right? You can, I find it gives you a little bit more time to kind of gather your thoughts and express them in a way that, or deliver them in a way that people can absorb it better, if that makes sense. So two really different worlds from my experience too. Both fun, both really fun. But yeah, I think it's funny when you see a radio guy go to television right away because he probably talks too long because on the radio people are long winded, whereas on TV you got to be quick and concise.
Yeah. So just obviously, like, I don't know how it is with other teams, but around here, like, there's a lot of involvement with the Oilers alumni. There's a lot of, kind of involvement with the Edmonton Oilers Community Foundation and all of that stuff that the organization has. So, are you able to kind of tell us about some of the stuff that you get to do as a part of the alumni, and kind of some of the charity work that you guys get to do as well with the Community Foundation and all of that good stuff?
Oh yeah, they we do tons of stuff. It's almost, I don't think I could name all the different charities. Like there's the First Shift program with young kids that I've done in the past. Um, you know, for the most part, I would say most of it happens in the off season, where you know we go up to Cold Lake or Slave Lake and do a hockey school or a tournament up there, and things, a charity golf in a location where we raise some money for the town and things like that. So there's no shortage of things that the Oilers and the alumni group we do, but and then in-game things like if you go to games, you see the presenting of the jersey to the soldier and things like that and stuff. But when I have time and when they ask, I try to make myself available as much as possible for to go to the read in week with kids, things like that, right? So if my schedule permits, I definitely take part in all those things.
Just coming to the tail end here, and it's been a fantastic conversation having you here. Just what would be one piece of advice that you would have for all the goalies currently playing out there, and as well as any kind of advice, or what would you say to a U18 goalie that's coming into their last year of junior? No, sorry, not U18, U20, sorry, U21 or whatever it is. And just coming out of like their last year junior, last year playing minor hockey and transitioning into the real world.
Um, yeah, I mean, it depends what your goals are. Is it to continue playing or not? For older guys, I now again, and I don't know the rules uh, exactly what they are, but I always say it's always great to be at a Canadian university. U sports are tremendous. Like the level of hockey is really high. It's unfortunately I don't think they get enough eyes on it to appreciate it as much. But to go that route, maybe it's a walk on to a university, and you just it's difficult, but it's happened before where you can progress in your career. And I know that going to Europe is a little bit more difficult than it was back when I played, but so many guys that I saw back in my day were finishing university and then seeing, you know what, let's take this hockey thing and play, professionally somewhere if they can find a spot to get to. But what I would say for those young guys that probably don't have representation or something like that, call the GM. Just, I mean, internet's a great thing, right? Um, there was one instance one year where I left messages with 5 GMs of NHL teams, seeing if I could attend one of their camps, and no one got back to me except for one, and it was Bob Gainey. And I remember my mom saying, Joaquin, Bob Gainey's on the phone. And I think my dad almost had a heart attack, right? And so I talked to Bob Gainey, and he was just completely honest. And he was saying, "Yeah, we've looked at you. We had some, we've asked some scouts." And he just said, unfortunately, he was with Dallas at the time, and he said, we have too many goalies. Like we'd invite you to camp, but it would be pointless because all these guys are under contract, right? So it's always good to get a yes or a no than a maybe, right? So get those answers if you're older, and it's tough. Your first phone call is going to be very tough, and you're probably going to stumble over your words. But write out a script, say what you want to say, practice it, and try it that way. Because I guarantee you, 100% stamp of approval. A general manager of a professional hockey team or a university team would much rather talk to the player than he would a parent or a agent or something like that, and you'll get a straight answer from them.
Yeah, that's on our list at some point as a segment to tackle on one of our episodes is the power of networking, especially when it comes to how small the hockey and goalie communities are,
Yeah.
and just kind of the opportunities that come from that. And just to build off of your kind of point about education too, like me personally, I played my last 2 years at Nate and ended up getting more back in scholarships than my tuition costs. So
Yeah.
technically, you know, quote
Yeah.
unquote got paid to to go
Paid to play.
play and go to
Yeah.
school, right? Yeah. So it's definitely something like I know everybody wants to hit the NHL, but you look at the percentages of how likely that is to happen, just being able to shoot for something like getting an education out of hockey, even if it's only half paid for, at least that really
Exactly.
helps. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good thing for young goalies to consider. Gager, thanks a bunch for coming on with us.
No
Where
worries,
can
guys.
people find you, follow you, all of that good stuff if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah, obviously 1 to 3 at EST afternoons with myself and Hernan Salas. We have a little sports show, and on Twitter, I believe it's Joaquin Gage 31 or X. Um, and if you are looking for any sort of financial planning advice or anything, looking for debt elimination, some investment strategies, risk management, feel free to email me at joaquin.gage@k4financial.ca.
Yeah, we'll
Awesome.
have all that in the show notes there to
Yeah.
link to your Twitter, EST, and EST
Perfect.
afternoons with you and Salas,
Appreciate that.
and as well as K4 Financial there as well. Joaquin, you have no idea how excited I was for this interview. I was honestly raving about it to Nathan. I was like,
Yeah.
man, I managed to pull Joaquin Gage. This is a great day. So
All I've heard the last week.
Oh, awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
you have no idea how excited I am to do to get you on here. But
Well, I'll have
again,
to come out and see your facility one time.
oh,
It'd be great.
absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
more than happy to have you out.
Perfect.
Again, thank you for coming on, much appreciated. Would absolutely love to have you back. But that'll kind of wrap it up for us here today on the DIY Goalie Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you can follow us on our social media platforms over on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and I think we're on Twitter too. I keep having to ask this question, but
Yeah, that's
yeah, Twitter.
probably the
So
least busy of our
least,
platforms,
yeah,
but yeah.
there you go. But no, you can follow us on all your favorite social media platforms at the DIYgoalie.com. You can also follow our in-person goalie school here in the Edmonton area at True North Goaltending on all of the social media platforms except for Instagram. That one is at YEG Goalie Coach. Everybody can also follow myself over on Instagram as well. I'm slowly starting to post a little more goalie content at Monday GC over there as well. Nathan, any final thoughts? Joaquin, any final thoughts? Anything?
No, guys, thanks. That was a lot of fun. I'm sure we'll see each other down the road.
Yeah, don't forget to leave us a review and a rating and to share the show with your friends.
Yeah, always on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching on your podcast platforms. Thanks so much for watching us over on YouTube. Make sure you give us a like, subscribe as well. Make some saves, goalies. We'll see you guys next time.